Welcome to DES Leadership Academy. I'm Dr. Anna Alkhub. Today we'll be looking at interactive notebooks. This is one of two-part series on interactive notebooks. We want to maximize the impact of learning through the use of these interactive notebooks. Teachers create opportunities for both formative and summative interpretations of student learning and use of these interpretations to inform future decisions about teaching. That's Hattie from his writings in 2012. It is important for teachers to demonstrate to all students that they can see their perspective communicated back to them, so that they have valuable feedback to self-assess, feel safe, and learn to understand others and the content with the same interest and concern. Feedback from students as to what students know, what they understand, where they make errors, when they have misconceptions, and when they're not as engaged as they should be, then teaching and learning can be synchronized. And that's where the interactive notebooks come in. We'll examine examples of visible learning, and we call these interactive notebooks. Here, students are responding to questions from a text they have read. Here's another student responding to questions in reference to the text. Who is the story about? Why does Henry want a dog? And there quickly the teacher can assess if the student understood the question and the reading from the text. On the bottom, you could see where the teacher responds, Henry is lonely and needs someone or something to play with. And she wrote exactly. Here, students demonstrate learning by organizing and sorting number cards that respond to numerals. Note the standard is listed on the right-hand corner. As you're teaching students standards, you also are able to keep track of their work and of their learning through these notebooks. What makes an interactive notebook is not only the student work, but as I showed you a few slides ago, it's the teacher feedback provided in the notebooks. The power is in the feedback that the teacher provides to the student. Here, a teacher responds and say, true. They might be worried about him feeling lonely. The teacher's responding to the student's response to the text. Interactive notebooks give teachers a quick look at the visible learning that students are obtaining. You see here in this example, the student has to go back to the text. Just the act of finding this paragraph and answering this question tells you that the student is able to go back into the text and look for the answers. Here's an example of how this lesson was organized in the interactive notebook. On the right, you can see how they've divided the responses in the notebook that the students have space to respond to. It would be key details. All the responses would go in that section. The recount and morale would go in that section, and the character response would go in the next section. There are different ways of organizing your notebooks. We will look at a few of those ways in this section and in part 2. Students organize and synthesize their thoughts in interactive notebooks. It helps multiple learning styles. They're accommodated at one time. The students are seeing if they're cutting and pasting and working in their notebooks, that's the tactile. They're hearing instructions. There are different learning styles that are addressed in these notebooks. When a student needs to go back and look in their notebook, the visual learner can refer back to it. It's not lost in a stack of papers in their desk or somewhere in a teacher's basket. This keeps everything together. In fact, it provides a way of progressively seeing if the student is learning throughout the year. Teachers track student growth over time. This is a wonderful way of strengthening student-teacher-parent relationships because parents can see the learning their children are making every day. It provides a venue for student and teachers to communicate back and forth. I've seen notebooks where students respond to the teacher's feedback. It does act as a resource to extend learning. Students could take these notebooks home, and while they're completing homework, they can refer back to the notebook and see what was taught in class. It promotes the use of writing to extend learning through processing and reflecting. And students systematically organize information as they learn. In these notebooks, students write detailed reflections of what they've learned, recording these in their notebooks. Students view interactive notebooks as a portfolio of student learning. I have interviewed students and I've asked them after 3 weeks of using their notebooks, does this help? 100% of the students say, yes, it helps. It helps me go back to see if I have any questions. I can go back in the notebook and find the answers. It helps me keep everything together. It helps me keep learning. Those are phrases that students have shared with me. Students use these notebooks as a resource as part of the learning process in centers, in science labs, using DBQs, and they also use them in math, in language arts. You can use these in every content area. Students use the interactive notebooks automatically. It just is part of their learning and growth. Students take to the notebooks faster than the teachers at times. Here's a creative way of understanding the correct order of operations in mathematics. Parenthesis, exponent, multiply or divide, add or subtract. When you open this, it's a foldable. Then you see examples for the kids to refer back to when they're working these problems. Students often ask teachers, why do I have to write it out? The answer is, I need to see your thinking. Students understand quickly that teachers need to see how they're learning if we explain it to them. And I'm hoping we as teachers explain to students that we need to get into their head. The only way we can do that is seeing it in writing. Having rules in these notebooks for students to remember help them refer back for further learning and studying. As you can see here on the left-hand side on the bottom, with rules for remembering, where students can refer back to the strategies they've learned. These are examples from classrooms that are using these interactive notebooks and where students are excelling. Again, you could see the strategy the student needs to use in multiplication. And they're using this area model to do it. The students take that strip, they have it in their notebook, and then they work out the problem. It helps so much to have it right in front of you. You know, we can have it up on our whiteboard, but there's nothing like having it right in front of you. This helps students that may have visual processing disorders. It may help a student that for some reason left their glasses at home. Having it right there in their notebooks helps them tremendously. Again, there's another comparing numbers strategy up here on the left-hand side, and you can see the standard that is being used. The interactive notebook is organized so students can easily access information. Interactive notebooks include unit vocabulary, the lesson standard, and scales with daily learning targets. Students have clearly identified notes and learning activities in their interactive notebooks. There's written teacher feedback because it's part of the interactive notebook. Here's an example where students have, of course, the multiplication table on the left-hand side there, but also they have a table of contents that they can refer to. As the year goes by, they can look at the different standards or topics they've learned and refer back to them in their notebooks. Earlier, we talked about reflecting. Look how this teacher had them put down the math reflections that they need to go through. And I solved the problem by, and the strategies they use. This helps students to talk about the subject with academic language, but it's right there. Kids could refer back to it. It could be an activity teachers do on a daily basis. Let's talk math. And they have students respond to them using this vocabulary, but it's right there in their notebooks. Look at the vocabulary, the math action words to know. Cause and effect. These are signal words, also in their notebooks. I would recommend that the teacher provide more feedback than just a check mark and use that academic language you want students to use. Here's another way that the teacher quickly can look down and check. But I want to encourage you all to move your academic notebooks to more of the visible learning than just checking things off. For your assignment, I'd like you to read about the interactive or academic notebooks on this link. and then explain how you can use these notebooks with your students.